You know how you said it's hard to see things clearly sometimes when you're too close?
Mhm.
Well, I've been trying to get some perspective. I've been really trying. Sarah, how can this be God's plan for me? I don't understand.
I don't know why terrible things happen to us sometimes, but I have to believe that something good is gonna come out of this.
So, what about you? In your time of need, whatever that looks like, how many of you would agree that it's very quickly that our perspectives in life can change? They seem to be able to change kind of on a dime. I don't know what your need is, but it may be that you're walking through financial struggles, or you may be walking through health concerns. You may be in the middle of losing a close friend or loved one. You may be at odds in your marriage or in a difficult relationship currently. Whatever the difficult needs are in your life, it's those times of difficulty that seem to be the times when our perspective can quickly go in a negative direction. So the question today is, what kind of perspective does God desire for us? What is such a thing that's called a godly perspective? And what does that look like? What does God tell us about that? And today, to find that answer, we are going to find ourselves in the book of Philippians. There are 4 verses in Philippians chapter 4 that we're going to look at. It's a set of verses that I imagine you have seen multiple times. But today, I believe that God has an answer for us of what godly perspective should look like in our time of need. Today, as we get a chance to walk through Philippians chapter 4, verses 10 through 13, I want you to notice something. There's a time of need in Paul's life. Paul, the apostle, is writing this letter, and for him, his need is financial. And if anybody in here has ever had a financial need in their life, you can very quickly understand that a financial need can quickly affect every aspect of your life. It seems to be sometimes all you can think about. It seems to wreck every emotion. Financial needs can quickly wreck a lot of our lives. And so I want you to see how Paul, in dealing with his crisis and dealing in his time of need, how he found a godly perspective. And I think there's 3 very specific things that were affected in his life that we're going to talk about today. They are on the back of your bulletin for you if you'd like to take notes. And today, those 3 things are C, P, R. And if you've ever been in the medical field or ever really seen anybody conduct CPR in life, it's a very serious issue. And so today, as we talk about CPR, I want to talk about what it would look like to conduct or perform CPR in your life, and specifically perform CPR on your perspective in life. So if you will, I'm going to read all of Philippians 4, 10 through 13. I'm going to read it all at once, and then we are going to dive through what CPR looks like in your life and on your perspective. Philippians chapter 4, starting in verse 10. Paul is speaking here, and he says, I rejoice greatly in the Lord, that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this only because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I also know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or living in want. And then the verse that everybody knows, Philippians 4:13, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. You see, we all like Philippians 4:13, the last verse in that thing, but we have a hard time looking at the verses that lead up to it. So today, when we're talking about CPR for your perspective in your time of need, whether it's a financial time of need or any other type of need, let's start with the C. To perform CPR in your perspective, you have to start with being content. Being content is the first thing that happens when we get to CPR. You see, there are two things in this set of verses that talk about what it looks like to be content in life. The first one is a word that is repeated twice. It's repeated there for emphasis. Very short verses, and you see it twice. You've already seen it, and I imagine you've already underlined it. It is the word learned. Learned is the word that is repeated twice when he talks about being content. It's there for a very specific reason. And for many of you, you are in a lifelong learning of education. Many of you have understood that learning something in life doesn't happen easy. It takes work. And so when it comes to being content where you are in life, it is not a magical light switch that automatically happens. Learning to be content is a very important life skill. It's a life skill that we need to be teaching to our children and our grandchildren. It's not something that just happens. I want you to imagine that you were to adopt a 6th grade student from another country who didn't know any math skills. But 6th grade math, as some of you in here are in 6th grade, understand that math gets harder and harder as you go along. And you put your 6th grader into that math environment, you are not immediately going to expect them to have the math skills that every other 6th grader in that room does. But you, as a teacher and as a parent, would have to start slow. You would have to start small to teach them the things that they have been learning over the years in math. 1 + 1, 2 × 6, 12 divided by 3. You can't just jump them into learning algebra. You have to start small. And you see, the learning process of being content does not just happen in your life from day 1 to day 2. Many of us want to be content where we are in life, in our jobs and in our situations, but we've never learned, or we've never taken the time to learn what it is to be content. And so I challenge you today, come alongside people. Be a person of education. Be a person who wants to learn in life, but wants to learn what it takes to be content. Start small. Start learning the small areas of what it looks like to be content. You know, another word here that helps us describe contentment is the idea in verse 12. Paul says, I have learned not only to be content, but he has learned the secret of being content in life. Contentment is not natural. It's not the way everybody else in life is doing it. And believe it or not, there are some secrets about what it looks like to be content. And so as I began to look at contentment in my life, this is kind of what I thought. When you look at the life of Bethany Hamilton, and if you come tonight, you will see a great story. It's a true story of this lady. And one of the things that she talks about in perspective is what it looks like to step back from the situation. You see, in life, it's very easy to get very close and to have very tunneled focus and very tunneled vision. But you and I, when we learn that the secret to being content in life has to do with pulling back sometimes. What that means is to step back from the situation, step back from the circumstances and the emotions and the difficulties that are right in front of us, that seem to be surrounding us and enslaving us, and to step back and to understand some things. You see, when we step back, we understand that there's a bigger picture. There's bigger things happening. There's other things being played out around us that we have a hard time understanding when we're so close to the situation. One of the things that we do when we step back and we learn the secret of getting the bigger picture is found, he says it multiple times. You see, one of the things that you learn that's a secret is that there's a time for everything. He understood what it was to not have anything, Paul says, but he also understood what it was like to have a lot. He understood what it was like to be hungry, and he understood what it was like to be well fed. As many of you in here have done a lot of things in your life, you understand that some years, the crop years are good. And for some years, the crop years are bad. You understand that there are years where you have a lot of nice things, and you also understand that there are years when things aren't so nice. And one of the things that's the secret of being content in life is to be able to step back and, like Ecclesiastes chapter 3 would say, under the sun, there is a time for everything. But when we're going through the circumstance, when we're walking through the difficult times of need, it's hard to understand that we're just walking in a small season of life because we're so focused on where we're at and what we're doing. But if we pray and we allow the Lord to move us back a little bit so that we can step back and understand that there is a bigger picture happening, that is what I think it looks like to understand the secrets of being content. Contentment is a lifelong process. It's a lifelong journey. And I pray that contentment is something that you strive for in life. Because everybody in our culture wants to tell you that contentment is not good. But if you are content in the lot and in the life and in the circumstance that the Lord has for you, if you are exactly where the Lord wants you, then be content there. Because it is the first thing to having a godly perspective. So what's the P in the CPR? After contentment comes power. CPR, contentment and then power. For power, we're going to look at verse 13. Where Philippians 4:13 would say, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. You see, when you look at the idea of CPR, if any of you have ever performed or administered CPR to a family member or to a friend, you know without a shadow of a doubt that CPR cannot happen unless there's an external power force happening. That's what I mean by that. Let's say I was going to perform CPR on my wife. I cannot do that by just standing off to the side and looking at her and acting like I'm going to actually do something. If I'm going to perform CPR on her, somebody, myself or somebody, has to put their hands in the middle of that chest cavity and has to start pumping, has to start exerting force into her life. And the exact same thing is true in your life. There has to be an external force that comes in from the outside and performs some kind of power into your life. And we know, after just celebrating Easter, we know very clearly that the life and the ministry and the death and ultimately the resurrection of Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, that he is that external force that everybody needs in their life. But it's really hard sometimes to understand not only that he is the force that we need, he's the power force that we need, but sometimes it can be very hard to understand how you and I tap into that external force. You want to know the secret? You want to know what the secret is to tapping into the power of Jesus Christ? It's all about resting and being completely dependent upon Jesus. You see, we live in a culture that says, as you grow up, you need to grow up and become more independent. You need to live to learn on your own, take care of yourself, do your stuff, take care of your own family. And all of those things within the world are correct, but somehow that philosophy transfers over to the spiritual life. You know, we come to faith in Jesus and we say, Jesus, I need you for salvation. But now that I've got you, I don't need you anymore. I can live life on my own. I can take care of life on my own. I can take care of all of my needs and all of my problems and all of my circumstances. I can do that on my own. And Jesus is saying, listen, I am the power not only for eternal salvation, but I am the power that you need in life. And so he says, if you want my power in life, then you got to depend upon me. You got to open your hands up. You got to open your heart and your mind up and say, you know what? As much as I want to do it on my own, as much as I think I can take care of everything in my life, the truth is, I need Jesus. I need his power. I need him to perform that miraculous power in my life every day because I cannot do it. You see, for the Apostle Paul, he understood this. One of the things that's unique about this passage is that it very clearly shows us something that's really hard. Most of the time, when you're coming to the Lord in prayer and you're looking for the Lord to powerfully move in your life, when you're at your time of need, when you're at your lowest point, when you're in your desperate circumstance, how many of you, the first thing you pray is, Lord, I believe you have the power, so will you, in all of your power, will you take me out of this situation? I'm tired of walking through it. I'm tired of being financially unstable. I'm tired of being in this relationship. I'm tired of being in this job. I'm tired of whatever it is. And you say, Lord, by your strength, take me out of it. And sometimes the Lord does want to move you out of it, but more times than not, you are exactly where he has you for a reason, for a purpose. And more times than not, he wants to use his power to not take you out of the situation, but instead, he wants to take you through the situation and the circumstance and time of need. You see, Paul never says, Lord, take me out of this time of need, of this financial need. But instead, he says, this is what I'm going through. And without a shadow of a doubt, I believe that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. That means I can get through this battle and I can find victory through this time of need because Jesus gives me strength. You see, this verse is often a verse that's quoted that says, I want to get out of whatever I'm in. I need the easy way out. And so to do that, I'm going to ask the Lord in all his power to take me out of this situation. But the truth is, if the Lord has you where he has you, then he wants you to be dependent upon him. He wants you to trust him to get you through the situation. You see, what the Lord is currently doing in you is most often, sometime in the future, something that the Lord wants to do through you. But before he can do anything through you in the future, he has to take you through it today. I want you to imagine a young couple or a middle-aged couple, a couple that's been married for a few years, who, like any married couple, goes through those low points, goes through those points where times are hard. And that couple, one of those, maybe the husband, he finds himself praying, Lord, I don't want to go through this marriage anymore. Lord, I don't want to be married to this person anymore. Lord, will you, in all your power and all your glory, will you help get me out of this situation? It may be a very difficult situation. Marriage is not always easy. But if that husband and that man will pray, Lord, by your power and for your glory, will you take me through the situation? Will you take me through this difficult circumstance of this hard marriage that I'm in? And more times than not, the Lord shows up, and in His power and in His greatness and in His glory, He will take us through that. And 5 years later, somehow, that married couple becomes a catalyst for counseling other married couples, other young couples who are in the same battle and who are in the same situation that say, I don't have any idea how our marriage is going to last another month. And the couple who decided to rest and be dependent upon Jesus and to find the strength in the situation to go through that situation and allow the Lord to work in their lives, they can sit with the young couple and say, you know what? We were there not long ago. And we didn't ask the Lord to take us out of it. We asked the Lord to take us through it. And the Lord does what He does when we ask. He shows up, and they become ministers of the gospel of Jesus because they went through something, and the Lord worked in them so that one day the Lord could work through them. So whatever your circumstance is, whatever your time of need is today, quit praying that the Lord would take you out of it. Because if the Lord has you there, He has the strength also to take you through the situation. And you cannot imagine what the Lord may want to do through your situation as a result of you allowing the power of Jesus Christ to directly affect your life. Contentment, power, and then the third one is an R. And that third one is rejoicing. You want to see your perspective in your time of need change? Then you need contentment, you need power, but you need this thing called rejoicing. Rejoicing is an idea that's centered around worshiping and honoring and being excited about what the Lord is doing. Rejoicing, even though your circumstance where you're standing at here and today may not be good, when you step back in the big picture of life and you step back and look at the whole kingdom of God and you look at all that the Lord is doing around you and you begin to rejoice, you will be amazed at how quickly your perspective can turn around. You see, we see in Philippians chapter 4, verse 10, that Paul really wasn't rejoicing about anything in his life. He wasn't trying to be fake and say that everything looked good and smelled good and everything was a bed of roses. No, Paul began to look at the other people in his life. Look at the other ways that the Lord is working in the life of people around him. And when he looked at what the Lord was doing in the lives of those around him, even though he was in a desperate time of need, he was able to rejoice. Why? Because he was excited about what the Lord was doing in the life of his people, understanding that he was in a time of need, understanding that there's a time for each of us in our life to go through different things. But when you can step back and you can begin to look at other people and you can begin to bless the name of the Lord and rejoice because there's other people that the Lord is working in their life, you will be amazed at how fast your perspective can turn from the negative doom and gloom to being excited and worshiping and honoring the Lord even in your time of need because of His work and ministry in the life of other people. But to do that, you got to step back a little bit and you got to look and allow the Lord to look around you and to see what He's doing in the life of other people. This is very clearly worked out in the movie. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't, this is kind of how it works itself out. Bethany Hamilton, all of her life was about surfing. From sun up to sundown, she worked as hard as she could to be the best surfer she possibly could. And one day, she lost her arm. A shark attack would come up and bite her arm and tear her arm off. And when that happened, after she's gone through a little bit of recovery and she's allowed to continue to live life, mentally, her life is wrecked. She has no idea what she's going to do that day or for any of the days moving in the future because she doesn't understand that she thought surfing was everything to her, and it was. And she had no idea what she was going to do for the rest of her life. She was at the very bottom that she had ever felt. And I imagine for you, if you were to lose that one thing, that you would be wrecked and you would have no idea what to do. But I want to tell you what changed her life and what changed her perspective. She would immediately join her youth group, and she ends up going on a mission trip. Last minute, there's a tsunami that would affect a local country, and she ends up getting on a plane with her stuff, with one arm. Everybody looking at her, and she is inspired to go on a mission trip. And that mission trip is what changed her life. Because you see, when she goes on the mission trip, and she begins to look around at what the Lord's doing in other parts of the world, when she begins to see how the Lord's kingdom is still moving forward, how the gospel of Jesus Christ is still being preached, and people are coming to salvation, that there's a bigger economy, that there's a bigger kingdom, that there's a bigger plan that's happening, even in her time of need, it completely changes her perspective. And the power of a mission trip is an opportunity to experience the power of God in a way that many of us have a hard time understanding. Because she was able to get out of her realm and she was able to rejoice and see something that was happening that she couldn't see from where she was. And if any of you have ever been on a mission trip, then you know exactly what it is I'm talking about. The opportunity to rejoice in the life of other people and rejoice in the work that the Lord is doing, even when it looks like He's not working in your life, even when your life is at the complete bottom. He is moving forward and He is doing something good. So the final application is this. Is the Lord convicting you? Has the Lord ever inspired you or convicted you about maybe wanting to go on a mission trip? Because you see, it may take a mission trip in your life, an opportunity to get out of your comfort zone, an opportunity to get out of your house and out of your day-to-day routine for you to see CPR performed in your life. You want to see your perspective change? It may need to change by you going on a mission trip. And I know that may sound weird, but anybody in here who's ever been on a mission trip can without a doubt tell you multiple ways of how the Lord performed CPR in their life and in their hearts and allowed the Lord to rejoice in their life. And so I challenge you, if you're sitting there right now and the Lord is pricking your heart and He's saying, listen, I've been telling you for years and years that I've wanted you to go here or to do this or be a part of this, and you have thought, that's just not for me. I don't know. I've never done that before. I can't do that. That's just not my cup of tea. What's other people going to think? I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the ability. What about this? What about that? And quickly you've talked yourself out of going on a mission trip. But I want you to know today that if that is you, if the Lord has been calling you and pricking your heart, and I'm not saying everybody in here has got to go to Africa or to China or to Romania. What I am saying is that the Lord has work for you and I to do, and that may involve you and I going on mission trips. And so if that's something that the Lord may be pricking in your heart, talk to somebody about it. Tell somebody else about it. Come and talk to me. We at this church would love to send you out and to support you in any type of missionary effort that you want to be a part of. And if you need help doing that, let us help you. Because I cannot believe that the Lord is not calling a single person in here to be a part of some type of mission. So here's the other challenge. That's the individual challenge to you. I know that there are people in here that the Lord is calling to be a part of some type of mission trip. Whether it's to another county, or just to another town, or maybe it's another state, or maybe it's somewhere in this state, or it may be an international trip. But the Lord may be calling you to that. And if He is, tell somebody. Secondly, here's the application for this church. I challenge this church over the next year, in 1 year, to send at least 10 people on a mission trip. Whether it's all 10 people in one place, or it's a couple people here, or it's a student there, or it's an adult here, everybody is a candidate for being a part of some type of mission trip. Whether it's painting, or doing a work project, or being involved in another town or a community, there are plenty of places that we can find to send people on mission for Jesus. And whether you know it or not, this church has a missions committee. And my challenge is, if you're here today and you're on that missions committee, would you take up the challenge of being the catalyst for that? Would you take up the challenge of being the ones who will dream big? Because there's people here that I know the Lord is pricking to be on mission. And that it could change their life and their perspective of their life forever. But we need people. We need people on that team who want to be the dreamers, who want to be the catalyst for moving that ministry forward, who are often finding opportunities and saying, do you want to be a part of this opportunity? Because I believe, just like in her life, that her perspective dearly changed when she went on a mission trip. And I've been on a few mission trips in my life, and there are people here who can attest, who've been on other mission trips, and they will tell you that their perspective for all of life changed when they stood back and they rejoiced at what the Lord is doing in other towns, in other states, and other parts of the world, that the Lord's economy and that His kingdom and that His gospel of His Son, Jesus Christ, is moving forward, and there are people coming to salvation. Will you be one of those people that wants to help move that story forward?